welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, everybody. This is Evelyn Hershkowitz, Reader Services Librarian. I'm here today with Nora Nguyen. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at
Nguyen, that's correct.
Nguyen. Okay. This is Nora's first rom-com. It's called Adam and Eve. Okay, my name is Evie, but this is Evie, right? This is
correct. Yes.
Okay. So it's Adam and Evie's matchmaking tour, which as soon as I saw it come out, I'm like, I have to read this one. My name's in the book. And
Exactly.
two, the cover was just fabulous. I mean, the cover just is so great. It's obviously a beach in Vietnam. So I'll let Nora tell everybody what this book is about. And then I will give a little bit about Nora. So you want to tell us what the book is about first, Nora? And then I'll talk about you.
Sure. Thanks, Evie. I'm going to try not to mess that up because
Right.
I'm used
It's
to
hard
saying
for
Adam
me.
and Evie's matchmaking
Right.
tour. But yes, I love the cover too. It's just the cover of my dreams. So this book is about two very different personalities who are thrown together on a whirlwind matchmaking tour through Vietnam. We've got Evie, who is a free-spirited poet. She has just lost her job. She's actually been fired from her job by her secret boyfriend. And so she is at a loss as to what to do with her life. She gets this letter in the mail 6 months after her aunt's death, and her aunt says, "You can inherit my row house in San Francisco, but first you have to go on this matchmaking tour in Vietnam." It is very much a gesture of a meddling Asian auntie, which is something I'm very used to. And then on the other side of the globe, we have Adam. He used to work in finance. Now he works at his sister's matchmaking tour company. And he's very stern. He's very rigid. He believes there's a specific way of moving throughout the world. And when he meets Evie, he realizes that her way is not it. So they are clashing over any number of things, big and small, lots of cultural differences. But as they're touring all the most gorgeous sites of Vietnam, the beaches, the waterfalls, the karaoke bars, they are finding that they're developing feelings for one another, and they have to figure out how to make it work even with their opposing personalities.
Yeah, I read it sitting on the beach out in Montauk.
Oh,
And
perfect.
just the beaches in Vietnam and everything about Vietnam sounds so beautiful. Sounds like such a beautiful country. So let me just read a little about you, Nora. She's a romance novelist with a yen for quick banter and breathtaking travel destinations. As a lifelong romance enthusiast, looking at you, bonnet rippers, you'll tell us what that is in a minute. She fully
Mhm.
believes in the healing power of transportive love story. Her work has been published in the Los Angeles Review of Books, Wired, Elle, and other publications. A recipient of an individual excellence award in fiction from the Ohio Arts Council. Nora lives in Central Ohio with her husband and daughter. She writes literary fiction under the name Tao Tai. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Where her debut novel, Banyan Moon, was a read with Jenna and a Barnes and Noble Discovery pick. That's amazing. That was your debut. What was that like getting a call from Jenna telling you that she picked your book?
I got a call from my editor and it was fabulous. It was a huge surprise. You don't expect that for your first book. And I knew that my publisher liked the book. My agent really liked it as well. But you never know how people outside your immediate team will receive it. So it felt extremely validating and exciting, of course. And it was probably the hardest secret I ever had to keep.
Right. How far in advance do they get in touch with you before they actually announce it on Read with Jenna?
About 6 months.
Oh, wow, that's hard.
It is hard. I only told my husband, and I think that might have been it. And even when the books arrived, I couldn't do the author thing where you unbox the books because
Right,
they had
because
the
it
seal
says
on
Read with
them.
Jenna, right.
Right, exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Like every month here, we try to guess what book Jen is picking, what book Reese is picking. We don't get
Yeah.
it right too often, but we
Oh,
try to do
really?
it every month based on what we know is coming out that Tuesday, the first
Right.
Tuesday of the month. So we always try, but We
It's
don't
a
get
fun
right.
game. I actually do that myself. Now
Yeah,
that I'm getting a few advanced copies,
right.
every once in a while something will land on my desk and I'll have a feeling about it.
Mhm.
I felt that way about Blue Sisters by Coco Milors,
I
and
finished that. I loved it.
it was fantastic. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that was such a good book. Yeah, I read it after it came out. I didn't read it before. So yeah, it was fabulous. It really was a great book. So that was a good pick.
hmm
So did you always want to be an author? Is that something that was always in your wheelhouse?
I was always a reader, but because I grew up surrounded by other Vietnamese immigrants, my family members, and there wasn't anybody in my circle that had done anything creative for a living. They were all immensely creative people, great storytellers, great chefs and artists, but they didn't necessarily make it their living. So I just didn't have a model for what that would be. So for a long time, I was just really content to read and be a reader. And I was intending to get my PhD in English literature because I thought, at least I could be around books. But then my path really kind of diverged. I learned about MFA programs. I went into an MFA program myself. I designed book covers for a while, so I was always close to sort of the publishing and literary process. And then after my MFA, I took about 10 years off of writing, and then I started again when I had my daughter.
Wonderful. So what do you like writing better, the literary or the romance?
I don't know that I could pick one that I like better. I think it's so much about the world that you want to inhabit at the time. Sometimes Banyan Moon was sort of a dark, sort of gothic, swampy, a little bit of a mystery, and it was very about tangled matriarchs and family relationships. And I really wanted to be in that world when I was writing it. And then after that, I felt the urge to do something a little different, to be a little more playful. And I've been a romance reader my whole life. And actually, the first full length worth of fiction I ever wrote was a romance. It never went anywhere, but it taught me how to play with the form and what was important in a love story. And so I wrote this story out of that sense of genuine love for the genre and what it could do, and also a little bit from just wanting to be in a lighter space after writing a book that was personal and was so heavy in some ways. But this is also very personal. Adam and Evie's matchmaking tour.
Are both of them autobiographical?
No, neither of them are, but I think both of them are inspired by things I think about, or I guess sort of things I've witnessed in the past. No one character is, a direct lifting from reality, but they're all just sort of like all characters are pastiche together from bits and pieces of people we see. And then once you're starting to put these bits and pieces of people together, and that you start putting them in situations where they are being challenged or having to act in certain ways, you really learn who they are and they become real to you. And I think that's the point where a book really becomes a book, when the characters are starting to speak in unique ways.
Mhm. Absolutely. So in your little bio, it says bonnet rippers. You want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, so that's a term I learned a few years ago. Bonnet rippers are Amish romances, and they're called that because they're based on the term bodice ripper, which is, of course, what we used to call, sometimes disparagingly, romance novels that featured a lot of love scenes. So when I was 10, during the summers between elementary school and middle school, my mom would drop me off at the library sometimes during those long summers. And this was in the 90s, early 2000s. So you could do things like this. And so I would just stay at the library and I would read all day. I would pick up stacks of books. And, I made my way through the usual chapter books that were kind of age appropriate. But then I found Amish romances, and I thought they were so beautiful. The covers are very distinctive. They're usually sort of hazy in this very like dreamlike bucolic way, and they feature an Amish woman in a bonnet, and she's always really beautiful and clear skinned, and she's looking off into the distance, and they were really compelling to me. And so I started reading those, and because the covers were sort of chaste and the content was pretty chaste too, my family didn't have a problem with me reading them in the way that they would have some of the real bodice rippers that
Right. Of
probably
course.
weren't appropriate.
No,
So
not
yeah,
at
that was
that
kind of
age.
my first foray.
Definitely not appropriate at that age.
No.
Definitely not. No. So obviously you've been to Vietnam.
I have, yes. Actually, when I graduated from college, my grandparents gave me a tour as a gift. So they paid for me to fly home to Vietnam with them. And we went on a couple tours actually of Vietnam. And a lot of those same places made them their way into this book. It wasn't a matchmaking tour, but it was just a really interesting experience to see all this big conflation of people. So there were people who lived in Vietnam and wanted to see more of the country, and then there were people like us who were returning home, or people who were bringing their kids for the first time. So it was just a really interesting process of discovery, because you could see the different ways that the country and the history impacted all the different kinds of people that were on the tour.
Yeah, no, some of those places just sound fabulous. What is your favorite place in Vietnam?
Yeah, I really love Dalat. It's the highland region of Vietnam, so it's a lot cooler than most of Vietnam, and it's in the central area, and the topography is just really unique. There are these like huge mountains and green forests and waterfalls.
Yeah,
That's
I
sort
love
of the
the
standout
description of the
feature.
waterfalls.
Yeah, yeah. And it was, I think that was my favorite place because it felt really grand in a way that at that point in my life, I just hadn't experienced yet. I hadn't even been to a lot of the famous sites of America, like, the Grand Canyon or any of those. And so just being amidst these sort of enormous natural wonders felt really life-changing for me.
Are you a first generation American, or your parents are?
I am, yes.
Oh, okay. So that was nice. Your grandparents live here or live in Vietnam?
They live here. We immigrated here when I was 5, and until their health prevented them from traveling, they would go back almost once every year. And so it was really a regular occurrence for them. But I didn't return until I was much older. So it was really special for me to be able to do it with them in particular.
Absolutely. That's a nice thing that they did for
Very
you.
nice.
Yeah. So you still have family over there?
Not very much. Most of my family, my immediate family that I keep in contact with, are in America now.
Mhm.
But some of my family members still have property in Vietnam, and so often they'll go back and spend long stretches of time, months at a time, sometimes even longer, like a year or so. And so it feels like we'll always have roots there. At least I hope so.
Very nice. It sounds like a beautiful country. I'm not a very adventurous person. I don't know if I'll ever get there. So I'm
Mm,
glad that I could read about it in the book and the way you described
yeah.
it and everything. Also, I'm not
Oh,
very
good.
adventurous with food, but after reading about some of the foods that you talked about, I was like, I want to try this. It sounds so good.
Yeah, Vietnamese food is it's wonderful. It's so amazing. And of course, nothing is as good as, what your mother and your grandmother make. And I'll feel that way too for the rest of my life. But there is something about just, going to a beach and being able to point to what you want to eat from the fishermen there, and then taking it to a stall just a few feet up the way, and just having this fresh seafood or this fresh fruit that had been on the trees and in the water just minutes before you got to it. There's just an immediacy with the ingredients that feels really refreshing.
Yeah. What's some of your favorite Vietnamese food?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it's starting to get to be soup weather. So one of my favorite foods is ba ca, and that means beef stew basically. And it's got carrots and potatoes, and it's scented with a little bit of cinnamon and anise, and it's not quite sweet, but it's got a whole bunch of different spices that make it really special. And it's something that I had to learn to make myself when I left home, because I found myself craving it so much, and I didn't want to have to go out to a restaurant every time I wanted it. So I developed a recipe to make in the Instant Pot, and now my husband will request it too, and it's just really fun to share that with him.
Is that what you cook mostly for your young daughter, or do you cook American food, or?
I really wish my young daughter would eat a wider variety of food, but like lots of kids, she has particular needs. But she has come around to rice, which is kind of the first step. She for a while she didn't like rice at all, but now she'll eat it buttered with salt. So we're gradually working our way there.
Okay, sounds good. So, do you read your reviews? Because I have 3 reviews here: Publishers Weekly, Library Journal, and Kirkus, and they're all lovely reviews. Have you
Oh,
read
thanks. Thanks for saying that. I have a policy that I won't read reviews unless my publisher sends them to me directly because, it's just not good for our mental health as
them? Okay,
authors to know what the world thinks of us. But I did see those 3 because they were positive and my
right,
sweet publisher sent them.
right. Like Publishers Weekly says, a romance lovers and armchair travelers alike are sure to be sucked in, which is
Mhm.
very nice.
Mhm.
Library Journal says, it's your first dive into romance. She offers a sexy tale that has relatable characters and a lush setting. And Kirkus says, funny and emotional in turns, a love story set amid modestly rich Asians in modern Vietnam. So they all gave you nice positive reviews. So I
I
think
was very
that's great.
thankful.
Yeah, that's really great. So are you going on tour? I know the book just came out this past Tuesday. So are you going on tour to promote the book?
I won't do a formal tour, but I will be hopping around at various places. So I did a launch event at my local Barnes and Noble, and I'm actually going back to my alma mater next week for a panel on romance writing. And so little things here and there.
Where is that being held?
Ohio State University.
Oh, very nice. What other romance writers are going to be there?
Jess Everly will be there. She writes queer Regency romances, and I am so looking forward to picking up one of her books. There, I hear the banter is wonderful, and it's just a romp of a book. Well, all her books.
Okay, that's great. So, what is your writing process like? Do you get up at 3 in the morning and write, or?
I think in different seasons of my life, I tend to be a little more rigorous. And then some seasons, with a young child, my daughter's 8 right now, you have to be a little more flexible if you're, volunteering or picking them early because they're sick or going to appointments or what have you. So I've learned to be flexible. But in an ideal world, I would probably write first thing in the morning just because that's when my mind is most willing to go to different places like that. I'm useless after 3 p.m. basically, which in my corporate life did not serve me well. But yeah, so I would probably write until lunch, take a break for lunch and work, and then hopefully get a little bit more in. But I really admire those writers who can sit and bang out words for 6 hours, but I do have a threshold where I just think nothing else will come out of me. And so I turn to emails or social media or whatever part of the author process isn't writing.
Okay, gotcha. So, is this your full-time job now, just writing, or?
It is between the
Okay,
2 books. It's what I do, and I always tell my husband. I always say, "Oh, I'm going to get a job this year. I'm going to get a job," but then I have another idea for a book, and I say, "Well, I'll get a job after I write this book," and then it just sort of spirals. But he is the most encouraging human being. He's the one who encouraged me to leave my job and pursue writing full time. And in the beginning, I was also supplementing my income with a lot of freelance writing, like essays and articles and things for digital publications. But I found that the novels were so absorbing that they're now just my full-time job.
that's so great. Are you writing something right now? Are you working on something?
I am. So I've got 2 projects in the works, which let me tell you is a little bit confusing sometimes. One of them is under my Tao Tai name and it's coming out early 2026.
Oh, very
And
nice.
I'm very excited about that. We're in the final editing stages now. it feels really different from anything I've ever done and very, very, very exciting that way. And then I'm working on another romantic comedy, and this one is set in a coastal town. It's sort of like a beachy version of Schitt's Creek, the TV show. So it's got all these wild side characters, and I'm so looking forward to getting back into that one too. So it's such a rewarding career because at any given moment, what it feels like is that I can just dip into a world where all my good friends are around and ready to talk with me. So it's really an extension of what, as a reader, I used to experience when I opened books and would join these worlds and escape to new places. But now the worlds are ones of my making, so it's just as special.
That's so wonderful. It's so great that you guys are all you authors are able to do this. But do you have like a group of authors that you hang around with or critique each other's works?
You know, I am such an introvert that for a long time I didn't really have much of an author community, but in the recent years, I've really, really come around to understanding the value of having that in place. So I do have a lot of authors who I will write to commiserate or celebrate certain things with, or will maybe read each other's drafts, or if I'm having a problem, a craft problem of some sort, I might reach out and say, like, do you have any advice about how to proceed here? And just having somebody who really understands the world that you're in and the struggles you're facing, it's immeasurably comforting, and it makes me feel a lot less alone because for 90% of my work life I am alone in front of my
Right.
laptop.
All authors, yeah, I know. They say it's a very lonely place sometimes, and
It
it's
can be.
yeah. Now, when you wrote Banyan Moon, was that did you have trouble getting that one published, your first book?
I didn't.
Good for you. That's
It,
great.
I don't like telling this story because last time I did it to an author, and she just shook her head and said, I can't talk to you anymore.
Well,
Um,
because I've spoken to so many authors that, they have so many books and so much trouble getting their first one published. So
sure.
congratulations to you that you were so able
It's
to do that.
Thank you. A lot of it is luck and timing, of course. My agent found me through some of the writing I was doing, as I mentioned, on the other websites, essays and things like that. And she felt like the voice was distinctive enough that she was curious to know what else I was working on. And I started a draft of Banyan Moon, but it wasn't very far along. So we met for coffee one day when she was in town, and we hit it off so much. And it was really encouraging because I realized somebody was like looking for something new from me. And so I hunkered down. I took that summer. I probably longer than just a summer, but I took a few months and I finished the book. And when she got the manuscript, she signed on to it. And so it's just been really a lovely process.
What year was that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it must have been summer of 2021.
Oh, okay. So it hasn't been that long.
No, like I said, I took a decade off after my MFA program. So so in a way, I guess to answer your question, it was actually a long road to publishing. It just, once it happened fast, but there was a long pause in between.
Do you have a contract with publishers now that you have to get something out at a certain time, or?
No, not exactly. So a lot of publishers will have something called a first right of refusal, where before you take the books out to the wider market, you show them what you've got and they get the chance to offer on it first.
Okay.
No, well, actually, my book for 2026, they did buy that one on submission or on proposal. So I had written a small amount of it, not very much at all. And I had a synopsis that they bought. So that one was the first time I actually worked on a deadline in that way.
Mhm. I have a question about the read with Jenna. Did you know that Jenna had read your book? I mean, is that like, does your publisher say, I'm sending it to Jenna?
You know, I knew that it was in her hands, yes. But my publisher knows me well enough to know that for example, I I have no access to sales information, and I have no desire for access to sales information. There are just certain things where my personality, being sort of anxious and controlling, I'm just better off not knowing. So I knew that they had sent the manuscript around to a few of the book clubs, but until the call came, I had no idea how seriously it was being considered for anything.
Right. And that must have been like the greatest day.
It was the greatest day. It really was. I think I told my husband, and we both started tearing up together, and it was just a special moment. And the Read with Jenna team, they love books. They don't I have the sense that they read every single book. They really support it. They connect to it, and they really change authors' lives. So
For sure.
that being my entry into the field, it felt so so special and so extraordinary, because I think, they lined the path that could have been really rocky with a lot of roses.
Did the book become a New York Times bestseller?
It did not, no. Maybe someday.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just a lot of her books. They go right from her mouth onto the New York Times. So,
They do, yes. Yeah, she's
okay,
got the
hopefully
golden touch.
she does. Hopefully 2026 will
We'll
be a good
see.
year. You,
We can play this podcast back. I'll play it back, and I'll say, Evie said it first.
right, absolutely. I'm very happy for you. I think you've got a
Thank
great
you.
career in front of you. I mean, I really love the book. So anybody who's listening, our book unfortunately has not come in yet. It's on order from the publisher, but we haven't gotten
Oh,
it yet. But
oh,
by this time this airs, it'll be here. So if you're interested,
perfect.
give us a call. We already have 2 holds on it. So give us a call so we can put it on hold for you. So
Excellent. Thank
yeah,
you so much. This
thank
was a
you.
joy.
Okay. Have you listened to the audiobook yet?
I've listened to portions of it. The audiobook narrators are both so good, and I got to select them from a list, and I knew that they were the right voices for Adam and Evie too. And I really liked that it was both a male voice and a female voice. I think that adds to a lot of the tension and the excitement and romance. So I know they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. I am a big audiobook listener.
You are?
Oh yeah, love it. But this one I actually read, but I just went back now and listened to a piece of the audio, and it's very good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here's a
You can
question
really
for
make or
you.
break a book.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
absolutely. No, here's a
Yeah.
question. Why did you
Mhm.
pick the name Evie? I have noticed, and I did a display recently on all the books that have the name
Mhm.
Evelyn and Evie, or Evie as I
Oh,
pronounce it.
really?
Yeah, it is exploded.
Oh,
Absolutely
that's
exploded.
awesome. I
So
had no
why
idea.
that name? I mean, what made you
You
pick
know,
that name?
actually, I just picked up a book. It's The Girls by Emma Cline,
Mhm.
and the main character there is named Evie or Evie. I'm not sure which
Right,
one too, and that surprised me because it's a very different book, of course.
right.
I I don't know. I think I'm one of those people that has no real logic when it comes to character names. I know some authors are very methodical. They'll go to census reports, they'll see what names are popular in the time period, but I choose them based on a gut instinct. Like I will picture the character, and then almost immediately the name will come to me as I'm developing this character. And so Evie was always Evie. Adam was always Adam. Adam and Evie together were always Adam and Evie. There have been a few characters I've changed. I think Atlas, who is the secret boyfriend in the book, his name was something else. It was something like Atlas that felt a little obscure too. I can't remember, but for the most part, when I land on that name and it feels right, I just kind of stick with it, and there's no rhyme or reason. She just is an Evie.
Was her real name Evelyn though?
I think.
Or
No,
was it always
I
Evie?
think her real name was always Evie.
Okay, okay. Just so you
Yeah,
know, Evelyn is the 9th most popular name right now. So
it is.
it wasn't popular when I was a kid, but it is popular
Really?
now. Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
beautiful name. We wanted to name our dog. Well, I say we. I think probably just me, not my husband. I wanted to name my daughter Eve,
Right.
and I think because he was a former Catholic student, he sort of had feelings about all the biblical references, and so we moved away from that. But I do love that name still.
Okay. Well, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. You are just
Same.
lovely. And keep writing because I will be reading. I really love your writing. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Rom-com
Thank you so much.
rom-coms are they're my jam now. I just
Oh,
love
good.
reading them. They're
How
just
are you reading anything good that I should pick up?
right now I am reading. It is not a rom-com. It's by Leanne Moriarty, her new one.
Oh, yeah,
One
yeah.
moment. It's very good, very
Oh,
different.
good. I
Very, very
love her writing. It's
yeah, I
great.
highly recommend that. And we already talked about Blue Sisters, which I had just finished.
Yep.
That was
Hmm.
wonderful. That was
It
really
was.
a great book. So I thank you so
Thank
much. So
you.
I'm going to close this chapter on Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.